So, Neil, on a technical front,
Hmm.
I'm recording my stream at this end, which I'll send to you as an MP3. So if I drop out, you can edit it in later.
Okay, all right. And we are live. And sorry, you guys weren't actually meant to hear the little technical issues there, but that's okay. Today I have with me Atheist Ape Man. He's across the pond over in the UK. Basically, Atheist Ape Man, basically, I like to hear the stories of how people started to feel that religion wasn't for them, and they started questioning and started not believing so much, and what led you from that point to where you are today. So take it away.
Sure. And to give you a bit of background, I'm 55. I live in the UK. Um, I'm married. I've got kids. My life is. I'm typically middle class, just part of the lucky few people in the world who are middle class. And I mean, my tale is a tale of a very, very long, slow loss of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because you sort of assume that people quickly lose their faith, and for me, it's been years and years and years, and it's been a very slow process, which might be a tale that people are interested in. So,
Mm-hmm.
just to give some background, I grew up in a Catholic house.
Okay.
Uh, and my dad was born a Catholic, and my mother converted to Catholicism to marry him, which made her a very,
Wow.
very, very devoted Catholic. I think people who convert are often quite hardcore.
Yes,
Um,
agreed.
but my dad was also from a very deeply religious house. He came from a typical Catholic family with 9 kids, and one of his brothers was a priest. So, religion was very, very deeply through the family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but despite that, there were never any problems with religion in the house. It was, I don't know how to say this. It was a sort of deep-seated religious belief, but it was very light touch. It didn't
Oh, okay.
impinge us. So, we wouldn't say grace before a meal, uh, but we went to church every single Sunday, absolutely without fail. Catholics have holy
Right.
days of obligation. When you're meant to go to church, we went to those. Um,
Like mass and stuff, right?
yeah, so I went to mass every Sunday, absolutely without fail. There was no, I can't remember a circumstance in my childhood when we didn't go. And then you have holy days of obligation, Ash Wednesday and Good Friday and things when you meant to go as well, and went to that. I would go to confession. I was encouraged to pray at night. Um, and
Wow.
but it was quite light touch. My parents wouldn't bring religion into a conversation, but religion was always
Right.
part of our life. Um, and yeah, my childhood went swimmingly, absolutely, delightful, average middle class family. And then I went to for my secondary school, for I guess high school. I went to a Catholic all boys school.
Ooh.
It was actually the same as my dad had gone to. I mean, it was literally the same school. He'd gone to this place in the 20s. I went
Mm-hmm.
there in the
I
70s.
guess.
Go on.
I guess that would sounded like it would be planned.
Uh, to be honest, I don't know if it's the same around the world, but certainly in the UK, uh, Catholic schools have got a great reputation for just education.
Mm.
And so my parents put a lot of effort into getting me to that school. Sorry, I should have clarified. I was one of 4 boys, so I was the fourth boy. Um,
Oh,
and
okay.
uh, my oldest 2 brothers had gone there. One I'd missed, and then we'd seen what not being at this. It was just a terrific school, partly because all the parents knew all the teachers, and all the teachers knew all the kids out of school because we're part of a fairly small Catholic community. Um,
Sure.
So I ended up at a Catholic boys' school with brothers who ran the school, But again, that was very light touch. They didn't really do much other than live on the site. Despite what we've since discovered about Catholic priests, literally nothing ever happened that would concern anybody about the behaviour of the priests. You know, there was no, despite the fact they were surrounded by 400 boys, there was absolutely nothing, not even a hint of anything going on. So I guess I was, you know, in the grand scheme of things, we were quite lucky. And again, it was a light touch Catholicism. We would have masses at school, but I'm struggling to think of when we would have had prayers outside of mass. But one of the things that we did have was priests would come in and talk to us about what they'd done. So missionaries would come in, talk about where they'd been, and in the middle of this, aged, I don't know, 13, 14, I decided I was going to be a priest.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Much to the surprise of my family, I do remember, you know, obviously I've got 3 brothers, all older than me. And I casually mentioned over dinner, you know, I'm thinking about being a priest. And there was this roar of laughter around the table. And I was...
Why would they laugh?
Well, because they're my older brothers. Why wouldn't they take the piss out of me?
Oh, yeah, okay. I got you there for sure.
But yeah, so you know, I sort of made this comment, and my parents took it straight. You know, they didn't laugh. They were quite surprised, and they suggested I should speak to my uncle. The uncle was a priest, and I spoke to him, and he was quite taken by all this. And then I sort of drifted, I would say, year and a half of being very devoted to the concept of being a priest, looking forward to, you know, the seminary and all. God, why would you look forward to seminary? But I did, you know, it's like a different person. And all this was going on at the same time, and the Catholics were ferocious about this. You know, I'm now a long way away from Catholicism. I don't know if they're still hot on it, but they were hot on it. And the only religion that really came into the school was in RE. We were given Catholic religious education. So it wasn't what you get now, you know, about other religions. It was about Catholicism. And one of the things that was constantly banged on about was about masturbation. Now, I don't know if you can remember being 13 and 14, whether it ever crossed your mind to masturbate. You know, I was normal. I didn't really think about much else.
Yeah. I always have a joke about that, actually. I always used to say that I discovered masturbation at a very early age, and my dad told me that it's fine, it's perfectly natural, just, you know, not at the dinner table.
Yeah, but I mean, I had an excruciating conversation with my father about it. You know, it was seen as a truly terrible sin.
Oh yeah,
and it caused me it you know, when you have a fear of hell, and more than anything you want to do something that should bring you so much pleasure and should be fantastic, it was I now look back on it and see that it was an evil education to be told this. It was just horrible.
yeah.
But it began to prey on my mind. And I actually became quite obsessed with the fact that I was going off to confession. You know, one of the joys of Catholicism is you can say, okay, I'm sorry for all of that, and you come out of it and you're absolutely pure. And
a few Hail Marys and you're good to go.
Yeah, you know, everything's gone. But there was this constant, that one of the bases of confessing is that you are meant to confess with the intention of not doing it again. And I was aware that I was going to do it again. So anyway, I parked this, and but I think that was part of my sort of drift away from wanting to be a priest. So I'm still deeply Catholic. I'm going to church, and then it's a really odd reason that I stopped going to church, which was, again, I don't think I'd ever missed a church on a Sunday. And one night I used to, so we're sort of jumping forward to me being 18. I've got a job serving in a pub 4 or 5 miles from where I lived, and I used to cycle there. And the church that I went to was halfway down a hill. And one night I'm cycling to the pub, and it's not terribly common in the UK that we get really heavy snow, but it's snowing. I hit the brakes going down this hill to stop at the church, and the bike doesn't stop because the road's slushy and wet and covered in snow. And I just thought, fuck it, I won't go. And I never went back. Which it's such a trivial reason, but quite clearly, looking back on it, I wasn't ready to keep going.
Right.
And I think I was just looking for any excuse not to go. And for a while, I didn't tell my parents. Then I did. Eventually there came a point when I wasn't working on a Sunday evening. They said, should we go to church? And I said, I've stopped going. And again, like I say, it was quite light touch. And it was at a period when my father had stopped going. My father's faith never died, but he'd been brought up with what you'd call the majesty of the Catholic Church. The Pope wore gilded clothing and everything was gold, and it was carried on people's shoulders. And then this was about the time that John Paul II was around, and they cut down on the gold, and they cut down on the being carried about, and he got the Pope mobile, and he'd go and talk to people, and the sort of distance of the church from the people had gone. And my dad actually loved that, and he hated the fact that it disappeared. So my dad wasn't going at the time, and I think that probably got me out of a little bit of trouble. Hang on a second, I'm absolutely sweltering here, so I've just got to pull a jumper over my head. 1 sec.
Sure. I guess your dad. Do you think that maybe his not going was sort of in response to them discontinuing that tradition, kind of thing?
Sorry, I missed the start of that. Were you saying, was that why my dad didn't go?
Yeah, why your dad suddenly stopped. Was he kind of anti or against the whole stopping of Pope stuff there that you were talking about?
Yeah, like I say, that the word he used was the majesty and the mystery of the church had gone. A lot of people saw it as a great thing. He saw it as a terrible thing. My dad was a funny bloke. Grew up in the back, in the slums of Sheffield, which is the city I'm from. Lived in the slums in the shadow of the steelworks, and was a man who read Shakespeare for entertainment, and had the complete works of Shakespeare. And as he finished, it would start them again. It was an utterly, it was a bizarre step, like I say, slums to a very educated man. But utterly completely self-educated, and he loved, like I say, the majesty of the church. And when John Paul II came in, I think he stopped going for about 5 or 6 years, and then went back. But again, my father was a devoted Catholic, never went to confession, as far as I know, never took communion, but utterly believed. It was a man of, it was a very interesting chap, but had some incredibly modern view. For someone who said the church got too modern and he went off it, this is a fellow who said that prostitution and drugs should be legalized. He said, why, if you make something, it was intelligent to know, if you make something illegal, you're going to cause crime and trouble and all. So it was a man of contradictions, but his faith was secure. His faith was sure, except for this little period when he sort of went off the church. But so I'm in the situation where I've stopped going to church. I've sort of drifted away from the church, but my thought process is still the same. So I went off to university, moved away from my hometown. By sheer chance, absolutely by accident, ended up in a Catholic hall of residence with its own chapel on site. Literally never. Well, I did once walk through the chapel, but not for something that they wanted me to be doing. It was it involved me and a woman. So utter sacrilege going into the church. That was literally the only time I ever went in through the doors. And I just embarked onto a life of what you do at university. But again, I'm surrounded by Catholics. My thought processes just haven't changed. And my views on things like abortion, marriage for life, all these kinds of things are still exactly the same as when I was a Catholic.
Okay.
Despite the fact that I'm at university doing a science subject.
What were you taking?
I was doing computer science, which is why I was able to install Chrome very easily tonight. But I was doing computer. This was in 1981, so I was doing it at a very early time. It was
right.
It was.
Oh, they were so new.
Oh God, yeah. It was. It was a terrific.
Yeah, I remember those days.
I was. There's a lot of argument about where the first computers were made, but Manchester was one of the places that claimed it. And I had lecturers who had soldered computers together immediately after the war. They were great people, and it was a wonderful time to be in it. But I'm there doing a science degree with medieval morals in my head. It was a really strange situation to be in. And
like a Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah, but I was completely unaware of it.
Okay.
I had views about, like I say, I had views about abortion that now I just find very strange. So I'm not going to church, but I've had 18 years of indoctrination, and this is. I'm sure. Well, I've been called an angry atheist, and
I think we all have.
But I think that people think we're angry at religion. I'm angry at what religion does, and if you want to, I don't care if you want to believe in a sky fairy who lives on a flying carpet. That's fine. But when you start telling children that it's true, because we've evolved to accept everything our parents say. If your parents say don't eat this, you don't eat it because it's a great evolutionary strategy never ever ever to disobey your parents. And then obviously there comes a point when that starts. But when your parents say don't go near the edge of that cliff, you believe them. And if you say why, and they say because you will fall over and die, you are utterly programmed to believe them. And so through that period, I've been told there's a God, he looks out for you. If you don't do what you're meant to do, you go to hell, you burn forever. It was immorality. I think it's immoral to do that to kids. But I agree. But it was done for reasons of absolute total love. My parents utterly believed it, and there was no malice at all in telling me that if I was good, I'd go to heaven. If I was bad, I'd go to hell. It was done purely because they believed it and because they thought they were doing good. And I think that's one of the things that really saddens me. That it's almost impossible to. It's impossible for me now to see that I could ever do that to a child. Yet it was done to me, and like I say, I want to be crystal clear. I was brought up in a brilliant family. I've almost no traumas in my life. In fact, no traumas at all caused by my parents, except for this. And it was done for good reasons. But then, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, I guess, is the phrase.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, actually.
Yeah. So I come out of university, start working, move out, move around the country, and had a usual young man's life, and I ended up in India for a while.
Cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Went to try and start a business. I've got a sort of innate need to start a business. It's always been boiling about. And I'd done a few sort of dead-endy jobs, and I just
Yeah.
headed off to India. And in India, I met a crazy Christian fundamentalist who bumped into me in the street, and I was just looking for somewhere to stay. And she said, the place that I stay in has got a spare room. And it was the first time I'd actually met a proper lunatic fundamentalist. She was from Australia. She was over there doing a Hindi course, so learning the language.
Right.
And in some respects, she was normal. And in other respects, she was absolutely barking mad. But as I say, my thought process was still there. And she said to me, if you lie in your room, lie in the dark, ask Jesus to come into your life, he'll come there. And I just thought, okay. And I tried it, and I lay in my room, and nothing happened. And it was the first time ever that I'd heard the phrase, "You didn't try hard enough." And I was, I was in India. I was tired. I weigh roughly, let me convert this to your term, to £200. And I came back from India weighing £130.
Holy cow.
So I was ill. I was tired. Yeah, boy, was I. And that fell out of one orifice in my body, all those 70 pounds. So I was on a low, and I was lying there, and I was almost weeping at this point to get Jesus into my life. I was cynical about it, but I just thought, no, I'll give it a go. And nothing. And it was the first time I've heard the phrase, "You didn't try hard enough." And I just thought, oh, fuck you. So India drifted off. I came back to the UK, went out with a girl who, while I was going out with her, became born again. She went off to Kenya with her God-bothering parents and came back born again. And then we split up, and my life started to change because I met my wife. And my wife has never believed. It just never came up in her house. No, her mum and dad didn't believe. She didn't believe. And I think she found what I thought a little bit bewildering, actually, that, I'd still got these vestiges of not a belief in God, but still the attitudes around it.
Right.
And just through listening to her, I felt that my attitude was changing day by day. And she was very matter of fact about things like abortion.
Did you guys talk about the difference in your beliefs quite a bit, or?
I think if anyone said to me, "Do you believe in God?" at this point, I might well have said no, but all the thought processes were there, and I think it was clear to her. I mean, I spoke to her before I spoke to you, before I came on this call, and she said she found some of the things I said and believed quite odd, considering that I'm an intensely logical person, and in most aspects of my life, I guess I used to look for evidence, but in this I didn't.
Well, no, but you're sort of, I think we're gleaned to not, because we're told, don't question, this is just the way it is. We know this to be true or whatever, right? So we don't really think to question it until later.
Yeah, and she would say things, and I'm in a I don't want to particularly use this word, but I'm in a blessed marriage. My wife and I have had fewer arguments than we've had years together.
That's fantastic.
And we just don't disagree about things, and the way we don't disagree about things is, if she said something that surprised me, I would think about it before we spoke, and if I said something that surprised her, she'd think before she spoke. So we never end up arguing about it, but and to some, I don't think we really discussed it. I think she just thought I was a bit odd, and I thought she was a bit odd in some tiny little aspects of our life. But we're both live and let live people. We're both very relaxed. And then I have really thought about this. That there's a very odd point at which I lose every bit of belief. So it's a very long story. You know, I stopped going to church at 18. And by the point I'm talking about now, I think I'm 45, maybe 42, 43, but that's sort of about 40 to 45, let's put it that way. So this has drifted on, the thought process is still there. And then I was reading, I only read factual books. I read probably one book of fiction a year. So I was reading
well, they're fun sometimes.
Say again?
They're fun sometimes to have those fiction or science fiction or fantasy books.
They are, but there's just so much to learn. So I just
True.
I read factual books. So I was reading. I realised I didn't know anything really about evolution. My biology education was poor, so I was reading The Selfish Gene. So I was reading a book by Richard Dawkins, but it wasn't the usual. You know, it wasn't the God Delusion or anything. It was The Selfish Gene.
Oh, it's a great book.
It's fabulous, and there's a point in it where he says, if you can. Sorry if this is a diversion, but he says if you can imagine a molecule that attracts the chemicals that make itself up. So all it has to have is the properties that it attracts other molecules that make itself up. But the moment the other molecule, the same molecule is being formed, it repels itself. So DNA does that. DNA, obviously, the bases attract their opposites, and then once the DNA is formed, for various reasons, it can just strip itself into two. But what he said is, if you can, he said, just do a thought experiment. If you can imagine this, then once that's formed, once you run out of the building blocks, then if any of those forms a better way of forming the bonds, then they will. And you sort of go from that simple thought experiment molecule, and you get the whole of evolution has to follow from it. And it's sort of 2 pages of the book. I think it's only about 30 or 40 pages into the book. And I just got this grasp that life on Earth was literally, we are literally vessels for genes. Now, I'd read that before, but I read this, and it's a very odd, it's an odd reason, I think, to lose your faith. But as I read it, and I realised that and it's easy to misuse this word. We are literally a handy vehicle for self-replicating chemicals. And I remember reading this. It was about 7 o'clock in the evening. I was sitting in a back room in the house. I was going out to meet a friend of mine to play snooker at 8:30, and I just felt my belief completely crumble. It just disappeared. And by the time I went out to play snooker, I remember walking across the street thinking, wow, I don't believe anymore. And it was such an astounding shock that I'd gone from believing to having absolutely no belief at all. And
it's like an epiphany almost.
Yeah, and you know, I was playing snooker. I seem to recall I played very badly because it had just gone.
Because you didn't pray first.
Yeah, and it just sort of yeah, I could understand it for being reading the God Delusion or anything like that, but it wasn't. It was just this true understanding of our place in the universe, that there is nothing, we have no purpose. And it happened in, I would say, an hour and a quarter from reading the book to going out. It had gone after years of just sitting in the back of my mind. And then there's a sort of hiatus after this where nothing really changes. A few years pass. We have kids. They are just getting to an age where they're starting to question things. Yeah, this is unbelievable. They're at a Catholic school as well. Again, because of the quality of education.
Sure.
But yeah, from the start, we've said to them, look, they're going to tell you stuff. Consider, we've never said don't believe. What we said is think about whether what they're saying sounds true. And they're both grown up, very balanced, atheist. They would sit and my daughter would say, yeah, you know, I just see it as another fairy tale that we're told at school that we have to write stories about. And my son's very much the same. He says we've got fairy tales today, or he did when he was still at school. They're getting to an age where they're leaving school. And about the time that they were starting to ask these questions, I suddenly discovered that on the internet there are atheists. It was a real, that was another moment of clarity. And I started to think a lot of people do with the atheist experience. And I watched and listened to a great deal of the atheists. Hey!
Yeah, there you go. Right there, wearing the shirt right there.
I watched, listened to a great deal of it. Absolutely fantastic. And the clarity of thought. I'm not really a deep philosopher, but I was just interested in the simplicity of the answers that they had to quite deep questions. And that then led me into another area, which, I was listening one day. I've always listened to it as a podcast rather than watching it. And that they did vulgarity for charity, and that led me on to cognitive dissonance. And the idea, I hope you're aware of the cognitive dissonance, guys.
Oh, many of us are. We deal with it daily on Twitter.
But they took the piss out of religious people, and I just that then led me into the skeptical community. So I got onto people like Skeptics with a K in the UK, Skeptics in the Pub, because despite the fact that I live in a great university town, we don't have a Skeptics in the Pub, and at some point I'm hoping to start that in our local city. And I've just gone on to a journey where I've become not deeply skeptical, I've become a deep skeptic. I don't take things on face value. I look for evidence. I tend to be the person in the, when my wife says, oh, such and such has said this on Facebook, I'm the one who looks it up and says, no, there's no evidence backing it up, or yeah, that's a fake news site, or whatever. But there's been a couple of the one thing that occasionally flashes back into my mind, but less so over the last 6 months, is hell, because that was quite deeply ingrained in me.
Actually, I'm just going to say, Godless Iowan. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
Yeah.
He's in the chat right now, actually, and he just did a video on that very subject, on how hard it can be to let that whole thought of hell go, because it sticks with you sometimes. It stuck with me too. And the funny thing is, I was raised Jewish, and we didn't really have a hell in Judaism, but many of my friends all believed that, and I was kind of freaked out by it too, right? But it goes away eventually, but it could stick with you for years.
Yeah, and I've one of my fears, and it's an odd. Well, no, it's not an odd fear. Yeah, it doesn't matter what you. Yeah, I'm genuine of the opinion. It doesn't matter what you do and what you think. We are going to rot. But one of the things I don't want to happen is that if I'm ill and in pain on a deathbed, for the fear of hell to pop back into my head when my defenses are low, and for me to do something. It's not going to affect what happens to me, but I want to stay true to my principles in those circumstances and just say, no, absolutely not. There is nothing there. And so I am working on getting hell out of my system. It's a long way in, but like I say, the last 6 months, much less so. If ever I think about it, I'm able to just expunge it from my mind, and it goes. It does go, so that's fine. But I'm on something of a crusade now to help people get away from religion. If the Jehovah's sodding witnesses come to my door, they get invited in. I make them a coffee, and I discuss things with them. I used to just say no.
That's great.
Get them in, and I am living testament to the fact that it may take hundreds of things to get you to change your mind. So if I move them 0.1% or even 1/100% or whatever it is, if I move them even one step towards the exit, in my opinion, I'm doing good. So I am trying, little by little, someone maybe someday, I might be one of their steps to being free.
That's kind of why I do these chats, just so you know, is because I know that there's lots of people out there that are doubting or on the fence. And I hope that talks like this enable people to see that it's difficult, but it still can be done. Right.
Yeah,
so that's why I have these things.
Yeah. And yeah, mine is an unusual tale because it's got years of sort of drifting on in the same mindset while not being overtly religious. And then that just vanishing overnight with probably 10 paragraphs of a book. And
sometimes that's all it takes.
I mentioned to you that I was off buying a telescope, and tonight, I would never have seen the incredible importance of this. Tonight, for the first time in my life, I saw Andromeda. And
cool.
I said to the wife and kids, yeah, they come out for 3 seconds, look, and they're bored. And I said, there's a couple of 100 billion stars in that smudge of light that you can see.
Right. And it's just mind-boggling, really.
Yeah. And our insignificance it's fantastic. I love the fact that we're a microscopic dot on a microscopic dot.
I just read something recently too that eventually Andromeda and Milky Way are going to merge.
That's right. And before the sun takes us over, that we're going to be merging, and all the shockwaves from that, we're toast. You and I aren't going to survive it.
No, well, we won't be around for it. But they're saying that it's already started. It started earlier than they anticipated, and the two galaxies are actually already just starting to do that now. But it's still going to take billions of years for it to complete.
Yeah, I think it's about 2.5 billion years or something. I'm planning still to be around. I'm determined to live forever by trying.
Show me how when you figure it out.
yeah. I'll tell you on my deathbed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't want. What I will also say is I don't begrudge the time that I spent believing, because it's made me the person I am. I'm quite happy with the person I am, and I'm also a huge believer, that if you change anything in your life, I wouldn't have the kids I've got, I wouldn't have the wife I've got, and I am in a very, very, very happy place. So I don't actually begrudge the time that I spent with these weird beliefs. And yeah, it makes you the person you are. And so I've got no anger towards. Yeah, I mean, I hope you've heard. I've got no anger towards my parents. I've got no anger towards my brothers, my priest of an uncle. I've no problem with the education I have. Yeah, no,
I don't think you can hold anger, right? Because they didn't realize it either, right? So
no,
can't be angry at them. You're angry at the system, really.
Yeah, and given that, getting biological about it, the number of sperm that you produce, there is no way that my children would exist if I'd stopped believing earlier. There's no way I would have met my wife. There's no way I would have had the kids. And so, yeah, life is as it is, and it's wonderful. I mean, so I'm sort of trying to go through how I feel now that I'm on a crusade to hell. I don't feel that the time was wasted. Hell's still around. And the other thing that has happened very definitely as a result of my skepticism is that I've politically moved leftwards.
Okay.
And I once I actually put a poll up on Twitter, which is, you're on hiding to nothing when you do that, because you're in the echo chamber.
Oh, yeah.
And I asked if people had moved left, stayed the same, or moved right. And there was a slight bias towards moving left, but I mean, it wasn't a huge sample. But it's as though the skepticism about why I believed what I believed about, I was totally anti-abortion when I first met my wife, and now I'm absolutely pro-choice.
Yeah.
And that's been a sort of move leftwards. I'm more socially aware, and I think part of it is I was quite right wing, and I think that the same indoctrinaire instinct that makes you believe in a supernatural being can make you believe what the right's telling you. And
Sure.
I may be adding 2 and 2 together and getting 5, but the two feel very entwined.
I think you're correct there as well, because they're religious people are very pro-life, so to speak. And people always think it's weird when I say, well, I'm an adoptee. I was born to Catholics, weird enough, and then raised by Jewish people. So I was an adoptee. Yeah. And then I always say, but I'm pro-choice. And they go, huh? Really? You'd think you'd be pro-life? And I'm, hey, if that's a better alternative for the person, then go for it. But if there's some kind of underlying reason as to why you have to abort the pregnancy, that's entirely your decision. And my say means nothing in it.
Yeah.
Really.
But I'm sure the two are entwined. But I'm actually reasonably good at saying I was wrong. And yeah, it's just, as I say, it's how you're brought up. It's what happens to you. And I've changed. I'm
for the better.
I hope. I'm certainly more rational than I was.
Yeah, which in my books is better, because if you can reason and rationalize better than somebody who's still stuck in that way of thinking, then I think you're better off.
Yeah.
Of course, they would argue, but
Yeah. So you've got my story. It's, I don't know how average it is. I don't know how different it is from anyone else.
It's your own story. Some of the methods might be similar, but you definitely had your own pathway. And that's why I like hearing these, because you get to hear the little nuances and differences and details and stuff, right?
Yeah. So. And what I would say to, I can't see how many people are on this. So, I don't know how many people are.
15 now.
Good grief. 15 people have given up time to listen to me. Fantastic.
I can't figure out why they want to listen to me either, but they seem.
Yeah, it's probably drugs kicking in or something.
I haven't touched any yet.
I wasn't sure, given that you're in Canada, aren't you? And when you said I'm off for a smoke before we talk, I wasn't quite sure.
No. I like to keep a level head while I'm doing these. So
no.
That'll come after.
Yeah, you'll need it. But the thing that, if you're listening and you're an atheist and you're trying to talk to people, that the biggest lesson I've learned is it's a it can be a long, slow process. We all want to say that magic phrase that makes someone go, wow, you're right. I don't think that ever happens.
No, it takes a little longer than that.
Yeah, and I've forgotten what ages I've talked about, but I've talked 18 to 40, let's call it 43, keep the maths simple, 25 years of travel, and I got there. And to anyone who's listening because they're doubting what they believe, just keep thinking about it. And if you keep thinking about it, you keep thinking about the rationality of what you actually believe and why you believe it, yeah, it's not going to go tomorrow. And you might just take one step, but take the step and just think, does this bit make sense? And it's, it was all I was doing. Meeting my wife made the big difference. You know, that was the final get out of jail free card. But I'd been undermining the walls of my faith for a long, long, long time, and the fact that it fell down in one go was sheer luck. And yeah,
Sherlock, like Sherlock Holmes.
Sheer luck.
Oh, Sherlock. Oh, God. I totally misheard that.
That's all right. And yeah, it looks like a sort of instant conversion, but you've heard the story. There's a lot of time before I had that so-called instant conversion. And if you're doubting, it's good to doubt. It may, if you ask all the questions that you've got, it may make your faith stronger, in which case, all power to your elbow. That's fine. In my experience, questioning doesn't always, didn't lead there. And I'm very, very happy that I'm now utterly rational. And I've got, I like to think 40 years, if I make it to 95, I've got 40 years to live a godless life and do all the good I can for all the people around me. And it's great out here. It's absolutely fabulous.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not that far behind you, by the way. I'm 52. So, yeah.
Oh, you look older.
Oh, thank you. So, older and wiser, I always like to say.
Oh, yeah.
Which is so not the truth. But anyways, yeah, if I can make another 40 years, I hope I make a difference to some people as well. Even if I don't know if I'll be doing this for 40 years, but I'll be doing it for the foreseeable future anyways.
Yeah, I just find myself, my attitude to everything has changed. I've talked about my attitude to politics, but my attitude to how I deal with people. So I have, since I've lost my faith, I've probably discarded more friendships than I ever believed was possible.
Wow.
And part of it was that I sort of I used to feel a duty to keep in touch with people that I maybe didn't have a great deal of time for, with whom I had fairly fundamental disagreements. And the knowledge that I've got 40 years, if I'm lucky, with a bit of luck and a following wind, it could be tomorrow, it could be before the end of this conversation. It's made me relish every second of my life. And it's, it allowed me to start my business. I was working for IBM at the time, and I realized that this is it. That we get one go and then we get spread across the world. It's led me to investigating what use can be made of my body when I die. And my wife has persuaded me to research a book. Basically, how do you donate every single cell of your body for the good of other human beings on the day you die?
That's what I did. I signed a whole form for that.
But I've always been on the donor registry, which gives away your main organs. But what do you do with your brain? And I've found someone in Britain who wants my brain when I'm dead. Perfect. And I've got this vision of
Young Frankenstein.
No.
I've got A, B normal.
No, I've actually got a vision of if you take a bin bag or a bin line, a garbage sack, I don't know what you would call it, and you get it wet. I've got this vision of the remains of me being about that size, just a bit of skin with a bit of liquid in it that fits into a baked bean tin, or a sort of Coke can, and that's my funeral, as you just drop these bits of me that haven't been reused. Because again, I can't do any good. Once I'm dead, that's it. But I would love for bits of me to be used. They're taking my brain away. And the other thing that atheism has given me is an even darker sense of humor than I have, because I'm speaking to this brain researcher and she said, "Don't worry, we'll treat your brain with respect." So I'm speaking to the person who's going to have my brain, assuming she's still alive when it happens. But someone like it, and she said, "Don't worry, we treat your remains with respect and care."
Dignity,
And
sure.
I just said, "I'm not bothered. You can put it in a blender. I really am not going to be
Yeah,
using it." And you
yeah.
could hear the shock.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Why the reverence about death? My reproducing
Party's
DNA
over.
has gone on. It's reproduced. I've got 2 kids. The
Yeah.
DNA will carry on. Well, hopefully. Well, and if it doesn't, my line dies out. And I'm lucky enough that all of my predecessors down to bacterial cells survived, and I'm here. And if my DNA is good enough to keep going, fine. If not, so be it. But it's another attitude change that once I'm gone, I'm just a bag of skin. So you might as well use
Yep.
everything that's in me for good. And when I do get the book, I'll come on again and plug it.
Oh, for sure. I saw something recently. Well, it wasn't probably last year, I think, where you can actually get your body. I think I don't know how they do it, but they turn you into this little, like, it almost looks like a base you would use in baseball, but it's
Okay.
this chunk thing, and then they plant you in the ground,
Yeah.
and they put like trees over top and stuff, and your body ends up becoming nutrients for all the plant life around there. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the way Neil Tyson had said it. He goes, we just go back to feeding the fauna and flora that we fed off of in our lifetimes.
Yeah. And the version I had is that there's someone, predictably it's in California, who turns you into a sort of nutrient slime, and you're then poured on a patch of ground. Good.
Yeah,
Yes.
sure.
If it was allowed, I think the Indian system of you're left out, and vultures and coyotes and whatever, not so much in Britain, but you are spread around faster. My molecules are reused, the better. But like I say, if I've got a working heart and a working liver and a working kidney, let someone have them. But the rest of me, get it reused. We pick blackberries. We eat a lot of blackberries. We love them. And the best blackberries in this area are the ones that grow in the cemetery. And I think there's a good reason for that.
Yep, I would agree.
And I'm not squeamish about it either.
Me either. It wouldn't bother me at all.
And I told the kids very young that the reason they are big, juicy, brilliant blackberries in the cemetery is because there's plenty of fertilizer there. And you see, that actually is another great thing about this movement, is that the movement to being an atheist, not the atheist movement, but this change is that I can say that to my kids and they're not scared by it. They're not bothered by it. It doesn't worry them at all that I can talk about what's going to happen when I die. And yeah, I tell them clearly, with a bit of luck and a following wind, it's not going to happen tomorrow. But when it happens, it's okay. And I think that they are, well, I hope that they're taking that on board.
They probably have.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously, if the both of you, it sounds like they're getting the right kind of message and education. So I think your kids will be just fine, man, and they won't need God. So there you go. Like, you were noticing that they were atheistic types on their online life. So
sorry, say that again.
you were saying something about you noticed their online personas were more to the atheistic side.
Yeah, the eldest is deeply skeptical.
Very good.
She puts me to shame. Actually, she things will get said, and she just goes, "Yeah, but you know what? Why would you think that?" And it might be something I've not thought about. So I'm really impressed. The younger one, the boy, he's a little less skeptical, but he's more skeptical than anyone I knew when I was a kid.
Right.
And he is quite happy just to read something. And We have a phrase: "Is it a fact or is it an internet fact?"
Oh, very good.
Because
I like
internet
that.
facts are
They're not
generally,
always facts.
yeah, they're often bollocks, and
Yeah.
and and we have that conversation fairly regularly, where they'll just say, "Yeah, I read this," and that, quite often they'll do it. Is that a real fact or an internet fact? And I've shown them how to find the truth and how to find where reality lies, as far as you can. And it's so this move to atheism and skeptical thinking is hopefully improving their life. Well, it's not even hopefully improving their life for the better. It's making their lives better. And
That's probably noticeable.
yeah, and yeah, don't get the impression they're dour, miserable kids because they're skeptical. They have really, really great dark senses of humor
Oh,
because,
awesome.
yeah, why wouldn't you? You know, I think once you're skeptical, you do have to go a bit dark.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's just a natural process.
Yeah. So yeah, you've got my journey. I don't know if there's anything else I can really say. I've my mind's empty.
Well, of that content, because you've expelled it. But I mean, um, basically, that was really great, man, and you carried that through beautifully. And I was very happy that you decided to come on and join me and share your story, because I think it's important. More of our voices that are out there, the better off we'll be in the long run, because they're, we have to deal with these religious right people that are literally trying to turn the U.S. into a theocracy. I don't think they will, hopefully, but you never know. So the more of our voices that are out there, the better off it is, right? So
yeah,
thank you for doing this.
no, you're welcome. But you've opened up a new seam of
Yes,
thought.
the political aspect, sure.
No, it's the US theocracy because
Oh,
I think these are the death spasms of deep religiosity in the United States. But you should
could
never,
be.
ever, ever doubt that death spasms can be extremely violent.
Sure.
And I think they've got a great deal of harm to do. And I watch what's going on, particularly with the US Supreme Court, with absolute horror and just unbelievable horror that, yeah, I'm not hooked on abortion. It just happens to be a subject that I've changed my views on. But the idea that I'm sure in 18 states, they think that you may end up with abortion effectively being banned. It's
It's
insane.
fucking scary, is what it is.
It's just awful. I mean, the UK is. I don't know what you know about the UK political system, but the church and the government are entwined. There are bishops in our upper house. There are 9 bishops sit and make laws in the UK. It's absolutely fucking balmy. But
Do they throw religiosity in, or do they keep it secular?
yeah, I mean, they represent the church in. I mean, it would be the equivalent of the Senate. I can't
Okay,
remember
yeah.
if there's 7 or 9. So, but what that means is because I mean, religion in the UK is a very soft, very very soft, very gentle. Uh, it's it's a social event rather than. I mean, there are some lunatic evangelicals, but in general, it's quite social. But it's sort of entwined. The Queen is the defender of the faith. Yeah, our coin. If you look at one of the any of our coins, it says Queen Elizabeth II FD, which is I don't know the Latin, but it's defender of the faith. And
Faith defender.
Fide Defendum, I think it is something like that. But even with that, even with all of that, we passed a law within the last year. I won't say within even the last 6 months, to ban protesters from standing within 500 yards of an abortion clinic. And
Wow.
that's good, progressive, sensible thought. And
Yep.
the idea that in America they're going the other way. But I've got a solution to the whole thing about if you're interested in how to stop people protesting outside abortion clinics, sponsor them to protest. Say, for every hour you protest, we will, have a GoFundMe. I can't do it from the UK. Have a GoFundMe and go to one of the people and say, your sponsorship today has raised, $3,000. Well done. And you walk into the abortion clinic with the check and give it to them and say, use this for abortions. And go out to the person and say, you have helped to fund, whatever it is, 10 abortions today. Well done.
That's brilliant.
And if you did it, it's not my idea. There's a brilliant. Have a look on YouTube. There was a Nazi march somewhere in Germany, far right march, and rather than going out and shouting and protesting, they sponsored the marchers, and they went out, worked out what the route was, and they put marks on the road, when they'd done 500 meters and 1,000 meters, and they were applauding them and saying, they had banners saying, you've raised this much money for anti-Nazi charities and for immigrant support groups. And it was the best possible thing. Laugh at these people. Turn
it into something good.
Yeah. And laughter will destroy anyone. But anyway, that's part. But yeah, I'm bothered by what happens in America because I listen to a lot of podcasts that are American based. I fear for them because there was a time when the world looked up to America, and it seems to have gone. And I wasn't a blind look up to America sort, but they're really, really going off the boil. But that's by the by. So it's something that wouldn't have bothered me 10 years, 20 years ago, but it does now.
Well, I'm kind of in agreement with you, though I think they're trying to get that theocracy going. I do believe, like you do, that they are in the death throes of religiosity so much, because you look at the millennials and what they're calling the nuns now, people that don't affiliate with any organized religion, at least that.
Yes.
Lots of them are atheists or at least agnostic. So yeah, I think that's great, really.
It's a bit like a bath with the plug out.
Mm-hmm.
The flow in has got to exceed the flow out, and at the moment the flow out is good, but will the water stay in there long enough for them to do some serious damage before they disappear? I don't know, but
it's a good analogy.
But the thing is, in the UK, I think we went over 50% non-belief in the last census, and that's great. It's a relaxed country. I've got deep religious friends, and you say you're atheist and they're fine with it.
That's cool.
So we set an example. I used to work for a Canadian company. I know that. Hey, the other side in Montreal, the home of the coldest weather I've ever experienced in my life. But but again, a nice light touch.
It gets worse.
People, but even the religious people were light, relaxed, calm. But I fear for your neighbours to the south.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I mean, all you Americans that are watching this broadcast right now, I've got a safe space for you up here if you need to get the hell out. So,
and come to the UK.
I'll meet you at the border.
Actually, we're not a safe space because of what we're doing with Europe at the moment. But we'll see.
Oh yeah, you guys have a lot to deal with there.
Oh yes, don't start me on that. My prediction is we will not leave.
I don't think you're going to either. I'm with you on that.
I sincerely bloody hope so.
I think it's silly if you do, to be honest. I mean,
I know it's balmy, but that's not what we're here to talk about. But it's
they're always saying, "Take me."
But again, you end up in the same arguments in the UK with the people who want us to leave. It's a religion. You say, what are your reasons? And they just say, oh, it's the right thing to do. And you say, okay, what are your reasons? They say, because it'll make Britain great again. You say, okay, but in what way? How will it improve your life tomorrow? And there's no answer. And
they can't answer it.
No, but it reminds, and you come out with facts and figures, and it reminds me of every single conversation between Matt Dillahunty and an evangelical, where they're just saying, you just have to believe in it. and
skirt around
facts
it.
don't matter. But anyway, that's it. I
It
think what I'm
reminds
trying
me.
to say, it affects every part of your life, this change.
Sure. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's face it. Biologically, our brain chemistry changes as we age too. So things change. It just happens. You know, like one of
Yeah.
the things I always like to say about that sort of thing, and it's not really related to brain chemistry, but well, in a way it is. Growing old is mandatory. Growing up is optional.
I'll write that down.
Yeah, so my dad used to tell me, because I used to come in, you know, my dad being the man of the house, and I'd go and hang out with him on Saturday mornings and watch cartoons with him because he just couldn't give up, you know, Looney Tunes or whatever, right? Because he used to watch them in college. And he was a good guy. Anyway, but that's kind of why I started my blood donor group to honor his commitment to his donations throughout his life.
Good.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we're past the hour, which is fantastic. So basically, after this, I usually do what we call an after party, and you're welcome to jump in for a little bit until you're too tired and you want to go to crash.
Okay.
Which is why I suggested maybe we go an hour earlier than I normally do, so that you could spend a little bit of time in the after party and meet some of my friends, like the Iowan and some other people. He says he's followed you for a while now on Twitter. So
poor fool, poor misguided fool.
Matt's good people. Anyway, all right, guys. So we're gonna do an after party. Just give me a few minutes to. I actually have it set up this time ahead of time because you know I'm kind of smart like that sometimes. And we'll get going in about 3-4 minutes. Thanks again for doing this with me. That was fantastic, and I enjoyed myself thoroughly talking to you, and I hope you did as well.
I enjoyed. Yeah, no, it was absolutely terrific. It was surprisingly enjoyable.
Yeah, surprisingly.
You guys are the first person to hear that in its entirety.
Wow, I feel privileged because these are often not easy stories for people to tell. So thank you so much for doing it.
No,
and hopefully somebody out there will have seen this or heard something from it, and it might help them. That's the goal. All right, guys. So you know what happens. I always say this at the end of each one of my streams. Don't forget, you can join us in the after party. I'll put a link in the Neil's Usual Suspects group. Oh, and I should mention also, I'll add you to that group now because I always add people after they've been on my show, and you're always welcome to jump into any of our after parties from here on out. So guys, give us a few minutes. We'll get things going. And as I always say at the end of these, remember guys, it's called faith because it's not knowledge.